The nothing that became everything. Hi, my name is Rebecca Chen. I'm 28 years old, and yesterday I signed the papers that made me CEO of Chen Industries. The same company my brother told me I'd never be smart enough to understand. The same company where my father laughed when I asked to join the management team. The same billion-dollar empire that's now entirely mine. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how the family golden boy lost everything, and how the nothing daughter took it all. I grew up in the shadow of my older brother Marcus. He was 3 years older, Yale-educated, and in my parents' eyes he walked on water. I went to a state school because Dad said, "Why waste money on fancy education for a girl who'll just get married?" Marcus got a Porsche for his 21st birthday. I got a card with $50 inside. At family dinners, Dad would spend hours discussing business strategy with Marcus while Mom asked me about my dating life. I learned to stay quiet, to make myself small, to accept that in the Chen family, daughters were decorative, not essential. After college, I worked as a financial analyst at a mid-sized firm. I was good at it, really good. I could spot patterns in data that others missed, could predict market shifts with uncanny accuracy. But my family never asked about my work. Marcus had joined Chen Industries right out of business school, naturally, being groomed to take over from Dad. Every Sunday dinner became a celebration of Marcus's latest triumph, while my accomplishments went unmentioned. Then came my 25th birthday dinner. I just closed a major deal at work, earning my firm millions. I was proud, hopeful. Maybe this time they'd see me. "I have some exciting news." I started as Mom brought out the cake. "That's nice, honey," Mom said absently. "Marcus, tell Rebecca about the Singapore project." Marcus leaned back in his chair, that familiar smirk on his face. "Landed a $50 million contract. Dad says it's the biggest deal in company history." "That's my boy," Dad boomed, raising his wine glass. "To Marcus, the future of Chen Industries." They toasted. I sat there, my news dying in my throat. "What was your news, sweetheart?" Mom asked as an afterthought. "Nothing important," I muttered. Marcus laughed. "Probably got Employee of the Month or something." "That's cute, Becca. Really cute." I should have left then. I should have walked away from that table and never looked back. But I didn't. I kept showing up, kept hoping, kept believing that somehow, someday they'd see me as more than nothing. The breaking point came 6 months later at Dad's 60th birthday party. The entire company was there, investors, board members, everyone who mattered in our world. Dad stood at the podium, giving a speech about legacy and succession. "I built this company from scratch," Dad said, his voice carrying across the ballroom. "And I always knew I'd pass it on to someone worthy. Someone with vision, intelligence, and the Chen killer instinct." He gestured to Marcus. "My son, Marcus Chen, will be the next CEO of Chen Industries." The room erupted in applause. Marcus stood, soaking it in. I felt something crack inside my chest. After the announcement, I cornered Dad in his study. "I want to work at Chen Industries," I said. "I have a finance degree, 5 years of experience, and I know I could contribute." "Rebecca, sweetheart," Dad interrupted, not even looking up from his phone. "Chen Industries isn't a charity. We need serious professionals, not what?" My voice shook. "Marcus can find you something in HR maybe. Filing, answering phones. I'm a senior financial analyst. I've managed portfolios worth hundreds of millions. At some no-name firm." He finally looked at me, his expression almost pitying. "This is the big leagues, honey. Why don't you focus on finding a nice husband? That's what your mother did, and look how well that worked out." I turned to leave, but Marcus was in the doorway, clearly having heard everything. The look on his face wasn't pity. It was contempt. "You really thought you belonged here," he said, laughing. "You really thought you could do what I do." "Marcus, I just wanted a chance." "A chance?" His voice rose. "Dad built this empire. I've spent years learning every aspect of this business. You think you can just waltz in because you can read a spreadsheet?" You're nothing, Rebecca. You're not smart enough, not tough enough, and frankly, not important enough to be part of this company. You never were and you never will be. The words hit like physical blows. I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of him. You know what? I said quietly. You're right. I am nothing to this family. But maybe that's about to change. I walked out of that mansion and sat in my car for 20 minutes, shaking. Then I dried my eyes, started the engine, and made a phone call that would change everything. Mr. Harrison. It's Rebecca Chen. I'm ready to accept your offer. 3 months earlier, I'd been headhunted by James Harrison, a legendary private equity investor. He wanted me to join his firm as a partner, to help him identify acquisition targets. I turned him down because I was still clinging to the fantasy of joining the family business. But that fantasy was dead now. Rebecca. Harrison's voice was warm. I was hoping you'd reconsider. When can you start? How soon do you need me? I threw myself into the new job with an intensity that surprised even Harrison. I worked 16-hour days, traveled constantly, and proved myself invaluable. Within 6 months, Harrison trusted me enough to let me lead my first acquisition analysis. That's when I discovered something interesting. Chen Industries was bleeding money. It started as routine due diligence. Harrison asked me to evaluate companies in the manufacturing sector, and Chen Industries popped up in my research. I almost skipped it, but professional curiosity won out. What I found made my blood run cold. Marcus's triumph in Singapore? Disaster. He'd negotiated terrible terms, locked the company into long-term contracts with razor-thin margins, and the project was hemorrhaging cash. The board didn't know yet because Marcus had been cooking the books, hiding the losses in creative accounting that wouldn't hold up to serious scrutiny. But that wasn't all. I dug deeper, accessing public filings, talking to industry contacts, piecing together a picture that grew darker with every detail. Marcus had been making reckless decisions for years, gambling on ventures that looked impressive but delivered nothing. Dad, so convinced of his golden boy's genius, had given Marcus increasing autonomy. And Marcus, arrogant and careless, had driven the company toward a cliff. Chen Industries was 6 months from a major cash crisis. Maybe a year at most before creditors came calling. I sat in my apartment, looking at the financial models on my screen, and a cold clarity settled over me. This was it. This was my chance. I spent the next 3 months building a war chest. Harrison and I identified 3 smaller competitors to Chen Industries, companies that were struggling but had solid fundamentals. We acquired them for pennies on the dollar, merged them, and created a lean, efficient operation. I named it Valor Manufacturing. I owned 40%. Harrison owned 60%, but had promised me increased equity based on performance. Then I waited for Chen Industries to implode. It happened faster than I expected. An investigative journalist got wind of the Singapore disaster and published a scathing exposé. Chen Industries' stock plummeted. Creditors started making nervous calls. The board demanded answers. My phone rang at 2 a.m. Rebecca, honey, we need your help. Her voice was frantic. What's wrong? It's the company. There's been some misunderstandings about Marcus's projects. Your father is so stressed. We thought maybe you could ask your boss if his firm might consider investing to help us through this rough patch. I let the silence stretch. You want me to ask my boss to bail out the company I wasn't good enough to work for? Sweetheart, please, this is family. I'll think about it. I hung up and didn't sleep the rest of the night. Not from stress. From anticipation. The next call came from Dad 3 days later. Rebecca, we need to talk business. I'm listening. Chen Industries needs a strategic partner. Harrison's firm has capital. I'm prepared to offer very favorable terms for an investment. What kind of terms? 20% equity for a $100 million injection. I did the math instantly. At their current valuation, that was robbery. But they were desperate. I'll discuss it with Mr. Harrison, I said neutrally. That night, Harrison and I sat in his office, the lights of the city glittering below us. "They're offering us 20% for $100 million, I said. Harrison whistled. 6 months ago, 20% would have cost us $400 million. Your family really is desperate. They are. I took a deep breath. I want to make a counteroffer. But I need you to trust me. I'm listening. I want to offer them $50 million for 51% of the company. Harrison leaned back. Majority control. They'll never accept. They will. Because in 2 weeks, their Singapore creditors are going to demand immediate payment of $50 million. I've seen the contracts Marcus signed. The penalty clauses are devastating. They either pay or they're in default, and default triggers acceleration on their other loans. It's a cascade. They'll be bankrupt within 30 days. And you know this how? Because I read every word of their public filings. Because I called in favors from every contact I've made in this industry. Because while my family was treating me like nothing, I was becoming someone who actually understood their business better than they did. Harrison studied me for a long moment. This is personal. Yes. Will you be able to stay objective? Absolutely. Because the best revenge isn't just taking their company. It's running it better than they ever could. He smiled. Make the offer. The family meeting happened in Dad's study, the same room where he'd dismissed me a year ago. Dad looked older, grayer. Marcus sat beside him, shoulders hunched. Mom hovered nervously. I sat across from them with Harrison beside me, the picture of professional composure. $50 million for 51% is insulting, Dad said, his voice lacking its usual thunder. That's my life's work. That's our offer, I said calmly. And it expires in 48 hours. We'll find other investors. No, you won't. We've talked to everyone in the market. No one wants to touch Chen Industries right now. Your reputation is in ruins, your financials are a disaster, and in 2 weeks you'll be in default. This is the only offer you're going to get. Marcus finally looked up. You did this. You sabotaged us. I met his eyes. I didn't do anything except watch you destroy your own company. Every bad decision was yours, Marcus. Every reckless deal, every cooked book, every arrogant assumption. You did this to yourself. We're family, Mom pleaded. We can't let outsiders take control. Mr. Harrison is the outsider, I said. I'm family, remember? You kept reminding me of that whenever you needed something. Well, this is me helping family. Dad's hands trembled. What happens if we refuse? You file for bankruptcy. The company gets liquidated. Creditors pick the bones clean. You lose everything. The silence in that room was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. We need time to think, Dad finally said. You have 48 hours. They signed the papers 36 hours later. Harrison and I took majority control of Chen Industries. As part of the deal, I was named Chief Operating Officer with a clear path to CEO. Marcus was relegated to a vice president position with no real authority. Dad stayed on as chairman, but it was a ceremonial role. The first board meeting was surreal. I sat at the head of the table where Marcus had once held court. All those investors and executives who'd toasted his brilliance now listened to my restructuring plan. We're going to divest the Singapore operations, I said. Take the loss now, clean up the balance sheet. We're going to focus on core competencies, cut the wasteful vanity projects, and rebuild profitability through disciplined execution. One board member raised his hand. And Marcus's other initiatives. Under review. Any that don't meet our new performance standards will be terminated. I saw Marcus across the table. His face flushed with humiliation. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Over the next 6 months, I tore Chen Industries apart and rebuilt it properly. I fired the incompetent executives Marcus had hired, brought in real talent, and implemented systems that made it impossible to hide losses the way he had. The company started to stabilize, then grow. Harrison, impressed with my performance, sold me an additional 20% of his stake, giving me controlling interest. On my 28th birthday, exactly 3 years after that terrible dinner, the board voted unanimously to make me CEO. Dad called me that night. "Rebecca, I need you to understand." "Understand what, Dad?" "That you're proud of me now that I'm successful. That you always believed in me." "Save it. I don't need your validation anymore. I was wrong about you." "Yes, you were. And you know what the saddest part is? If you'd given me a chance 3 years ago, I would have helped you and Marcus build something great. We could have been a real family business. But you were so convinced I was nothing that you couldn't see I was the only one who actually understood this industry." "I know. I'm sorry. Your apology doesn't change anything. I'm running this company now, and I'm going to do it my way." The hardest conversation was with Marcus. I called him into my office 3 months into my tenure as CEO. "I'm leaving," he said before I could speak. "I know that's what you want. Actually, I want you to stay." He looked up suspicious. "Why?" "Because you're smart when you're not trying to prove something. Because the company needs people who know its history. Because despite everything you're still family. You're not firing me." "No. But I'm not giving you a free ride either. You'll report to the CFO, you'll work normal hours like everyone else, and you'll be judged on your results. No special treatment. Can you handle that?" He was quiet for a long time. "I was cruel to you." "Yes, you were. I'm sorry." "I know. But sorry doesn't undo 3 years of being called nothing. You're going to have to earn your way back, Marcus. Not with me. I've already forgiven you. But with yourself." He nodded slowly and left my office. Over the following months, I watched him transform. Without the pressure of being the golden child, without Dad's impossible expectations, Marcus became a decent executive. Not brilliant but solid. Reliable. We'd never be close, but we found a way to work together professionally. Mom and I eventually rebuilt something resembling a relationship. She admitted she'd failed me, that she'd been so focused on keeping Dad happy that she'd ignored her own daughter's worth. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Dad died 2 years after I became CEO. His last words to me were, "You were always the strong one." I was just too proud to see it. I didn't cry at his funeral. I'd already grieved for the father I wished I'd had. Today, Chen Industries is worth 3 times what it was when I took over. We're expanding into new markets, developing innovative products, and building a reputation for excellence. I've been featured in Fortune, Forbes, and the Wall Street Journal. Last month, I was named one of the most influential business leaders under 35. Yesterday, I got a letter from a young woman who works in our finance department. She thanked me for creating a company culture where women are judged on merit, where talent matters more than connections. She said I inspired her to pursue an MBA, to dream bigger than she'd thought possible. I pinned that letter on my office wall, right across from my degrees that my family said were worthless. Sometimes people ask me if I feel guilty for taking the company from my family. I don't. I didn't take anything. They gave it away through their own arrogance and incompetence. I just had the skills and courage to catch it when it fell. My brother was wrong. I wasn't nothing. I was everything they refused to see. And now the whole world sees it too.